So this month, I will be doing something a little bit different. For the month of August, I am doing what I'm calling the Sharpening Your Axe Summer Series, nonprofit strategy sessions on sustainability. August is a great time to slow down, to go deep, to learn, to plan, and to prepare for the hustle of the end of the year. Just like Abraham Lincoln said, if you give me 8 hours to chop down a tree, I'll spend 6 hours sharpening my axe. So, my goal with this series is to help you sharpen your proverbial organizational axe during the slower, somewhat days of summer. Each week, I'll be focusing on one of the core elements that make nonprofits strong: fundraising, boards, staff, finance, and organizational direction. Each week, I'll be sharing content that explores the theme from different angles, a combination of short form strategy tips, long form trainings that go deeper into some aspect of the theme, and always an encore podcast episode featuring me in more of a generative conversation with one of my incredible guests, exploring the theme from yet a third angle. These strategy sessions are fire. So grab a notebook, grab a pen, curl up someplace really comfy, and enjoy. Hi, this is the Nonprofit Mastermind podcast, and I'm your host, Richie-Babbage. Each week, I do a deep dive into the mindset and strategies and tactics and tools of scaling an incredible, high-impact nonprofit. I'm so glad you're here. This is 5-Minute Strategy for leaders of growth stage nonprofits. Each week, I share a quick strategy tip on launching, scaling, or leading your growing nonprofit. As we near the end of the year, organizational leaders are beginning to think in earnest about planning for the coming year, especially budgets and financial plans. Having the right metrics is critical. At their core, metrics are really about clarity and intentionality. And it's that clarity and intentionality that lay the foundation for effective planning. So as you think about your financial plans and your budgets for next year, make sure to be crystal clear about the financial outcomes that you care most about, and then figure out the metrics that will allow you to be intentional in tracking those outcomes. To help, this week, I'm building on last week's video and focusing on an important set of metrics, key financial indicators. So what are key financial indicators? How do you think about them? And what are some to note? A key financial indicator is a metric that an organization uses to track, measure, and analyze the financial health of the institution. KFIs serve 3 primary purposes. First, they are important navigational tools. They allow you to have a clear picture of where you stand relative to the financial health goals and standards that you've set for your organization. They're also strategic decision-making tools. They help leadership and the board make important strategic decisions about how the organization should move and about how the budget relates to overall strategy. And finally, they are financial management tools. Ultimately, KFIs help your organization manage its resources more efficiently. So in identifying the KFIs that you want to track, ask yourself 3 questions. First, what is your definition of financial health? What matters most to you? What do you want to make sure you're tracking so that you have your pulse on the measures of health that matter most for your organization? Second, what insights do you want to be able to have, or decisions do you want to be able to make? Do you want to be able to see cash flow because you're nervous about it, or navigate an upcoming cliff that you know is coming? Do you want to be able to track against progress towards a reserve? And finally, who's the audience? Who's going to be using this data? The executive director, key members of the staff, your board. Which data you track is really important for who's going to be using it. So there are 4 categories of indicators that you want to look at. First is liquidity. Liquidity directly impacts your organization's ability to respond to new opportunities and adapt to unforeseen budget constraints and meet your basic needs. It's essentially how much cash you have on hand. Stability measures the sources and flow of income that impact your ability to run your organization and specific programs at their basic level to stay stable. Fundraising indicators measure how much you are spending in order to stay solvent. And mission efficiency measures track the extent to which your expenses are consistent with your mission and values. For example, do you want to be spending the amount that you're spending on benefits? Are salaries going up over time? in keeping with underlying values about compensation? Are certain programs receiving greater allocations than others? And is that okay? That's what mission efficiency measures help you track. So here are a few indicators within each bucket that you can look at. Within liquidity, monthly cash on hand, days cash on hand, and current ratio. Monthly and days cash on hand estimate how many days or months of an organization's expenses could be covered with the current cash balances in your bank. And your current ratio is essentially an indicator of your ability to meet short-term financial obligations. It compares your current assets to your current liabilities. Within the stability bucket, you want to look at reliance ratios, which show how much of your income is reliant on a particular source. Too much reliance in one place can be a sign of instability. So you can run reliance ratios generally, or you can say how much of your income is reliant on certain sources like government, foundations, etc. Accounts payable and receivable aging are the portions of your accounts payable or receivable that are more than 3 months old. As these become higher, it may indicate a possible breakdown in systems or a pending cash flow problem. In fundraising, you want to look at the percentage of funds that are spent on fundraising. And in terms of fundraising efficiency, the average dollar amount raised from every dollar spent on fundraising. You also want to look at the return on investment for how much you spend on your campaigns and your events. And finally, mission efficiency. Program efficiency is one measure. How much of each dollar spent goes directly to the program work. And benefits efficiency is a measure of the percentage of all expenses that are spent on things like salaries and benefits. I'll see you next week for 5 more minutes of strategy. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of the Nonprofit Mastermind podcast. I always have so much fun doing these episodes. Definitely check out the links to all of the goodies that I mentioned in this episode. You can get that at Richie-Babbage.com/podcast for the show notes. And if you enjoyed this episode and think that you have a friend or colleague who would also enjoy, I would love if you would leave a review and share. Have a great week.